What if you knew that tombs were not meant to be a place for the dead? They were never meant to be a place for the dead. You'll probably be surprised to learn about the gods of death in ancient Egypt. This is a storytelling of art history facts for a bedtime meditation. In the previous episode, we talked about the tombs of ancient Egypt, why tombs were important, and why they were painted on their walls. If you haven't heard it yet, be sure to listen to it, because our channel's nightly storytelling will give you a deep knowledge of art history, my good friend. And tonight, before we go any further, I want you to imagine Egypt from the sky. Not the Egypt we know today, but ancient Egypt. At first glance, it seems almost impossible. A long, cutting through an endless ocean of golden desert, and right in the middle of it flows a river, the Nile. To be honest, without the Nile, there probably wouldn't have been any ancient Egypt at all. Everything depended on it. Farms, villages, cities, even kings. Every year, almost like clockwork, the Nile overflowed its banks. Instead of destroying the land, those floods left behind rich, dark soil, fresh, fertile, ready for another year of harvest. Imagine if nature delivered free fertilizer to your garden every year. No trucks, no chemicals, just, "Thank you, river." The ancient Egyptians believed that this incredible gift was no accident. They believed it was part of a natural order created by the gods, and the annual flood itself was associated with a god named Happy. Wow, great! Now here's an interesting fact. Happy wasn't actually the god of the Nile itself. Right, guys? He was the god of the annual flood. The life-giving flood that made agriculture possible. Artists often depicted him with a round belly, soft features, and plants growing around him. It was almost as if nature itself had become a person. It may seem unusual today, but to the Egyptians, that full belly symbolized abundance. Abundant food, a healthy harvest, life. Yeah. Some sources say that Hopi, the god of the Nile flood, had a large belly and prominent breasts similar to those of women. So there's not much information on his gender, but wait. And this is what confused me the first time I noticed it. If Hopi was usually shown with a big round belly, why do some pictures make him look almost athletic? Seriously, it really is. Search Hopi online someday. You'll probably notice it too. In some pictures, he looks soft and heavy, with a large belly and even breasts that look surprisingly feminine. In others, he looks much thinner. So, which one is really true? I'll tell you, both. But the fuller body is the traditional and much more common representation in ancient Egyptian art. Even their entire calendar revolved around the river. Instead of thinking of 4 seasons like many of us do today, they divided the year into 3. The Egyptians divided the year into 3 beautiful seasons: Akhet, when the Nile flooded the land; Peret, when the waters slowly pulled back, revealing rich black soil where farmers planted and crops began to grow; and finally, Shemu, when the fields turned golden and it was time to harvest everything the Nile had made possible. According to Egyptologists, Hopi was not meant to represent beauty or physical strength. He represented abundance. Enough water, enough grain, enough food. A body that seemed full was actually a symbol of prosperity, a symbol of the abundance and blessings that the Nile brought with it. His round belly didn't say, "This god eats a lot." It was saying, "The Nile has done its job." Now, what about breasts? This surprises many people. In ancient Egyptian texts, Hopi is almost always referred to as a male deity, but artists often gave him full feminine breasts. Why? Because he didn't just represent a river, he represented nourishment, fertility, growth, the ability to nourish an entire civilization. In a way, her body was a combination of male and female characteristics, the power to create a flood. And the power to nurture, to sustain life after that. Fascinating, isn't it? Well, the ancient Egyptian gods were not just symbols of one thing in the ancient Egyptians' belief. As we go forward, or even in the next episodes, we will see that each god was a symbol of several things at the same time. Support us by subscribing, friends. Together we will find an enjoyable literacy in art history. Thank you. It's almost as if the Egyptians wanted to show that life itself does not fit completely into the categories that we often create. Now, if you've seen slimmer versions of the Hopi, they usually come from different artistic traditions, later historical periods, damaged bas-reliefs, modern reconstructions, or even modern images inspired by ancient art, not exact copies of it. Ancient Egyptian art wasn't completely frozen for 3,000 years. Styles changed, artists changed. Different workshops had different ways of carving a single god. But if you walk through the galleries of the British Museum, or the Metropolitan Museum of Art, or study the temple reliefs from Karnak, you'll quickly notice that a pattern appears over and over again. A round belly, a soft chest, water plants wrapped around his body, and sometimes two Hopis standing side by side. One represents Upper Egypt, another Lower Egypt. Together, they tie lotus and papyrus plants around the hieroglyph called Sema, ancient symbol of Egyptian unity. This is one of the most beautiful political and religious images the Egyptians have ever created. One river, two lands, one kingdom. So, my friends, are you okay? Before we even start talking about pyramids, or tombs, or pharaohs, it's worth remembering one simple thing. None of those incredible achievements would have existed without this calm ribbon of water flowing gently through the desert. Now, before we go any further, there's someone you absolutely have to meet. His name was Osiris. Wow, amazing, yeah? And if you asked an ancient Egyptian who ruled the world of the dead, almost everyone would have given you the same answer. Osiris.
But here's the interesting part. Osiris wasn't always the ruler of the afterlife. Long before that, the Egyptians believed he had once ruled Egypt itself. According to one of Egypt's most famous myths, Osiris was the son of Geb, the god of the earth, and Nut, the goddess of the sky. Amazing. His wife was Isis. His brother was Set. And if you've ever heard the phrase family drama, well, this story takes it to a whole new level. The Egyptians believed that while Osiris ruled Egypt, he brought order where there had once been chaos. He taught people how to farm, how to grow grain, how to live together as a civilized society. He was remembered as a king who made life better, but not everyone was happy about that. His brother Set became deeply jealous. Ancient stories tell us that jealousy eventually turned into murder. Set killed Osiris and scattered pieces of his body across Egypt. Imagine, friends, imagine that for a moment. The king who had brought life to the land was now gone. Everything seemed lost. But then, Isis refused to accept the ending. She began one of the most famous journeys in Egyptian mythology. Together with her sister Nephthys, she searched across the land, collecting the scattered pieces of Osiris's body, one by one. It's almost like one of those impossible puzzles, except this one carried the hope of bringing someone back. Using powerful magic, Isis briefly restored Osiris to life, just long enough for them to conceive a son. His name was Horus. Horus. And Horus would one day grow up to challenge Set and reclaim the throne of Egypt. But Osiris himself never returned to the world of the living. Instead, he became something even greater, the eternal king of the afterlife, the judge of the dead, the one every Egyptian hoped to meet after death. If you've ever seen statues of Osiris, you might notice something unusual. His body is wrapped like a mummy. His arms are crossed over his chest. In his hands, he holds the crook and the flail, symbols of royal authority. And on his head sits the tall white Atef crown, framed by two graceful ostrich feathers. Sometimes his skin is painted green. Other times, it's black. Neither color was meant to make him look frightening. Green was the color of fresh plants after the Nile floods. Black was the color of the rich, fertile soil the river left behind every year. To the ancient Egyptians, both colors meant exactly the same thing: life, renewal, the promise that something could grow again. Maybe that's why Osiris became so important, because his story wasn't really about dying. It was about coming back, not back to this world, but into another one. And if you were an ancient Egyptian, that made all the difference. Every year, thousands of pilgrims traveled to Abydos, one of Osiris's holiest cities. They didn't go there to mourn. They went to celebrate hope, to remember that death was never believed to be the final chapter, only the beginning of another journey.
Well, friends, thank you for being with me so far. I hope you enjoyed reviewing the history of art. We have some very beautiful nights ahead of us,
and we are going to gradually master the history of art with peace and pleasure. Subscribe to us, friends. Don't forget to like. Thank you. Thank you. Until the next episode, good night.